Good morning, world. This is Steve Rao, the host of Pod Rookies World Edition, and I'm about to board a plane again, but I want to go ahead and open up and kick off the show, and I apologize for my extensive travel for most of the rest of the year and into the new year. I wanted to first of all say that the Hamas truce has been extended, and as of now, there are 11 more hostages released, which gives the total to 69. And Israel has freed 33 Palestinian prisoners, reportedly all women and children. There's a diplomatic spat between Greece and Rishi Sunak, the British Prime Minister, canceling a planned meeting with Mitsotakis, Kyrios Mitsotakis, his Greek counterpart. He told the BBC that the Parthenon sculpture should be returned to Greece from the British Museum. The wife of the head of Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Agency was poisoned today with metals, and Australia will ban imports of single-use vapes in January. The news of the day, before I just go into a quick monologue, is the first transatlantic flight powered by sustainable fuels is set to take off today from London to New York. It's a Boeing 787, and it's derived from waste fats, most of the fuel. The rest is from the waste of American corn production. This will be the first flight that's using this kind of renewable fuel. And it's hard to decarbonize air travel, but it's quite interesting that they say that fuels can lower life cycle emissions by up to 70%. With that being said, I want to wish everyone a happy Giving Tuesday in the United States of America or around the world. I forgot to mention, I'm greeting you from North Carolina, the 8th largest state in the United States of America, and my hometown of Morrisville. But Giving Tuesday is about demonstrating radical generosity. This idea that we can actually look at other people's suffering and treat it as our own suffering, whether it's helping a friend, supporting a cause that people are rallying behind, or simply just giving something you have to someone else that doesn't have it. I could go on, but the bottom line is that it's about empathy. And it's about unleashing this power of love in our hearts to do something nice for someone else. So on this Giving Tuesday, we ask that you try to find something to do that's good for someone else. And on that note, I want to welcome Mark Lee as I'm here for a few minutes. And Mark, thank you so much. And Rosalind Carter, by the way, lays in repose in Atlanta. There was a tragic killing and stabbing in Southeast Raleigh, violence just plaguing our nation and hitting right home in North Carolina, where Mark Lee and I live, along with Nick Paldiva and Kimberly Calhoun. Very, very scary. You just don't know at this point, whether I'm happy that my kids are out of the schools, although this could also happen in colleges. But almost every day you drop your child off to school, you're worried about whether there's going to be a shooting or stabbing. And so this is not only psychologically damaging for the children, but even the parents. And I know they're kind of random cases, but how can you bring a knife into school? And, are we going to get to the point where we're going to have metal detectors in schools, or they're looking at clear casing, So anyway, those are some thoughts, Mark. I'm going to go ahead. I know it sounds like we have a guest.
We do have some guests and everything. We've got two guests, but as you were saying that, a couple of things crossed my mind. One, on one of our other shows, they were actually talking about, I think it was at an EMT, it might have been in Kentucky or one of our other southeastern states and everything, where there was actually a axe wielding woman that was actually threatening those particular workers and all in that space. So, and I think that was like a day or two ago as well. So it is not just the gun violence, but like you said, it is the knife violence and everything else. And of course, the kids are living in some very interesting times and some very sensitive times. But I was actually having a conversation with a coworker yesterday and all in that space. And she was telling me how her son had gotten involved. And that's why they didn't have dance class last week, because he was accused of um, like doing those kind of touches that are considered not fair and all in that space. And of course, he is saying that that was not the case. It was an accidental bumping and all in that kind of way. But, you know, we definitely want to protect people, and we don't want them to be in those kind of situations where they are feeling in harm's way. But we do know that sometimes people will make false accusations. And that's kind of what the mother was feeling was going on in that particular situation, because apparently there was a crush and a number of other things that were going on in that case. And we do know, as you know, that there have been political leaders that have been accused of being not in the best way, in the ways that they were treating their women staffers and all in that space. And sometimes the accusations have been justified, and sometimes the accusations have not been justified, and all along those lines. So it is always some interesting things that go on, even in our schools and all along those lines. But we do have some guests, and you mentioned Giving Tuesday earlier and all in that space. And we've got Ida Moye, who will be coming along with Sister Mary Josepha, and they are definitely part of that whole notion of giving, and definitely trying to make sure that we are giving, and even having some of that kind of what they call giving that is for a cause and all along those lines, because we do know that there are a number of people that are trying to give, but they are also trying to give to kind of, they call it investment capital, but also some of that capital being social capital. That's the word I was looking for. Sometimes they are using for social good and all along those lines. So I'll let Miss Ida speak first, and definitely want to hear from Sister Mary Josepha as well. But definitely, we do know that a lot of people are trying to give to a variety of organizations, whether that be the ones that we know, like the Sierra Club and United Way, or some of the lesser known organizations, because this is definitely Giving Tuesday, and we are hoping that people are trying to find something that resonates with them and that they are giving money for. I know that one of the places I work at is a cultural arts center, and we have definitely been the recipients of Giving Tuesday over at the St. Joseph Historic Foundation that runs the Hayti Heritage Center in Durham, North Carolina, which is an African-American cultural center and all in that space. So Miss Ida, if you'll definitely introduce us to Sister Mary, and I'm sure that we'll have some questions for you as well, but we do know that it's Giving Tuesday, so I know a lot of folks that have got giving on their mind, and even finding ways that folks can use this giving to maybe even make some investments as well, because that's something that we were talking about offline before the show. So if you'll share a little bit about what is going on in your world.
Well, let me begin by introducing myself. My name is Ida Moye, and I've been in the financial world over 27 years, probably in all aspects of the financial world. I'm also a lawyer as well. So I've done a lot of work in the estate planning side of it. And one of the things that I have always maintained, that in fact that foundations can do more for social causes. They get a lot of tax breaks. They get a lot of things that really spur the growth of those foundations, but they really are not able to react as quickly as, say, somebody that's got boots on the ground. And so one of the things I always implicated into any kind of trust plans or any type of estate plans I did is not to wait till the end of the year to give, but give all year long. And I drew models that basically showed that if you did it during the year, you could actually max out your portfolio, and you could streamline it. You could change the correlations. You could take some of the risk factors out of it. And so I was happy to see that in 2018 that Forbes agreed with me. And Forbes said philanthropy is truly the actual hidden asset that people aren't using properly. And so today is Giving Tuesday. And what people don't know is 25% of the donations of what's made between Giving Tuesday and the end of the year, December 31st. Okay. But it only goes less after you get into the new year. Okay, so in other words, we understand that because it goes along with the actual decisions that we make at the end of the year to rectify our portfolio, as well as to be able to, look at where you have, where it's going, how much taxes you're going to have to pay, as well as you want to feel good about doing that at the end of the year. It's kind of like that type of thing, but at the same time, our issues are becoming more current now. They're becoming a need for more immediate action. And so I see this whole concept of philanthropy morphing into being part of wealth management going forward, because everything that I'm seeing right now is telling me people want to be intricately involved with their philanthropy dollars. They want to be actively involved in it. So what I chose this year is to basically, my charity would be the Benedictine Sisters of Mary. And the reason for that is that I felt an intricate connection to it because of their foundress, who basically literally came from the Oblate Sisters. And the Oblate Sisters were actually where I went to school at in Detroit. I actually had Oblate Sisters, and some of my favorite teachers were Oblate Sisters. And so that was a connection. And then there was another connection because of the fact that the abbess that was started and it was called Ephesus. And I visited that in 1988, and I kept pictures of this in my home since those years. And basically, I was able to gift those pictures to the sisters because it always needed a home. And I saw that. But what's so important here is that we now have in America a phenomenon that we are not obviously hearing about, and that's the incorruptibility of their founder. And I want to just let Sister Josefa pretty much give the history of the Benedictine sisters, of Mary, and then tell you what they've been up to. Sister, you want to begin with that?
Thank you, Ida. We're very grateful for your inviting us to participate in this panel and to speak about our order and Sister Wilhelmina. It might be important in giving a history of our order to start with a little bit of background on Sister Wilhelmina. She was born in a very poor, segregated neighborhood in St. Louis back in the 1920s. So there was a great deal of material hardship because of the poverty at that time, and then also the social strife, the racial tension back then, and that continues even to this day, but it was particularly difficult in St. Louis at that time. But Sister Wilhelmina's family was quite extraordinary in their very vibrant Catholic faith. And they recognized that regardless of the injustice that they suffered from their fellow men, their true dignity and their true worth was as children of God. And they realized that their identity as Catholics was the most important thing in their lives. So it was from this household of very vibrant faith that Sister Wilhelmina decided to give herself entirely to God. And as you said, she was an Oblate Sister of Providence for over 50 years, giving her life to the service of God's poor, teaching his impoverished children and children who suffered from disadvantaged backgrounds. And she was a very faithful member, very zealous for her religious family. In the 70s, 80s, 90s, however, some experimentation came into the social milieu. The upheaval that started in the 60s, it began to affect religious life in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, so that sisters discarded the habit. They began to abandon traditional practice like community prayer, silence in the cloister. And Sister Wilhelmina recognized how precious these were as safeguards to the religious life, to her identity as a bride of Christ. And so she thought, easier to if I found anew rather than try to reform. And so at the age of 70, over her original community, she began a very daring thing. She started a very small community of sisters who would be committed to preserving traditional religious observance and would put themselves at the service of the church through prayer and sacrifice, especially prayer and sacrifice for priests. So this is the beginning of our order. It started with just Sister Wilhelmina and a couple of companions in 1995. But Sister was very, very zealous, very faithful, and a model that drew many other young women to join the community. So at this point, we have grown quite a bit. The original 3, we now have over 60 Benedictines of Mary, and we even opened a second house to accommodate the new religious vocations that are applying. But Ida mentioned Sister Wilhelmina's passing and her recent discovery. So I'd like to say a word about that, if I may, too. Sister Wilhelmina was 95 years old in 2019. She was nearing the end of her life. And we had already sent off the first 6 sisters to start our second house. So there were 2 houses of Benedictines of Mary, about 5 hours apart, but we were all called back for that important moment when Sister Wilhelmina was going to pass into eternity. We all were there, all present in her room, singing, praying, and we're very blessed to witness the peaceful passing of Sister Wilhelmina. It was a tremendous grace for our young community. 4.5 years later, we're going to bring her relics into our Abbey Church, as is customary for religious communities. And so we exhumed the grave, and we were going to place the relics of Sister Wilhelmina in our Abbey Church. We were surprised to see the state of the relics that were left. Her body was intact, still flexible, remarkably preserved. And we saw this as a sign of great hope, a confirmation from God that Sister Wilhelmina's fidelity has not been left unrewarded, and a sign of hope for everyone that whatever sacrifices are made in this life in view of eternity, they're not overlooked by our Heavenly Father. He's listening. Precious in his eyes is the death of his faithful ones. So it's been a grace for our community, but I would say also for the whole country.
Wow, interesting and everything. Just out of curiosity, I know that, and I don't know what your own faith is, but I do have friends that are very big into what some people call liberation theology and all along those lines. So how important do you think it is for the faith community to be involved both in terms of the financial world as well as maybe even some of the political discussions that go on as well? I'd love to hear your thoughts around that, both Miss Ida as well as Sister Josephia, because like I said, a dear friend of mine, Reverend Kenny, is very much involved in the notion, and actually he was involved with the Ferguson case there in St. Louis. So he's definitely been involved in some of the notions of ministers as leaders of justice. And we know Martin Luther King was definitely a leader of justice as well.
Well, I think for me as a layperson, and I'm also a cradle Catholic, this is very significant because there's only 200 incorruptibles in the world. Now, the majority of them are actually sisters who have actually started orders. And each one of them have always had some type of message from God. And what sisters probably not telling you that there's been miracles too that have occurred because of this, and that people are flocking to Gower, Missouri, which is about 45 minutes out from 45 miles out from Kansas City, Missouri. Now, it's ironic that Kansas City Chiefs are really rebuilding that whole community now, changing it dramatically. And so a lot of things are happening in this town, but outside of that, there's incremental things that are happening. We're seeing the music is being basically, and Sister hasn't told you about the music yet, but that now that town actually is considered as one of the centers of music for the world now. And they contributed to that in a big way, which is quite modest about that. But a lot of things have just been happening behind the scenes, and they've been basically done by donors just simply finding a cause that they wanted to participate in and making this happen. These sisters have been independently living humbly, I must say, behind the scenes, doing their work. And no one knew who they were because I didn't even know about them. Most people in the Catholic Church did not know about them. But that's their whole thing, being behind the scenes, doing the hidden work, that Mother Mary would have done for Jesus, or what would have happened with the apostles. So what I'm looking for here is sort of the bigger piece of this, how this is impacting people. I just took a pilgrimage there. We had busloads of people who came there, and they had the conversations on the bus going were like, everyday conversations. But when they left, there was a transformation. So I'm thinking from my point of view, from a lay point of view, that this thing is bigger than what we're looking at right now, because it's only been 200 of them. And I believe that she's been selected to bring a message to us. We're in a very cruel world right now. We've got all this violence. We talked about it at the first end. We've got a lot of different things. We've got moralistic issues. We've got this, we've got that. But what does this really mean? Now, I want to just back up a little bit. Sister, tell them a little bit about the evolution of the music.
Yes. So the apostolate that the Benedictines of Mary have is a spiritual apostolate. We offer prayer and sacrifice for the needs of the world. We do want to share that, though, in a way that other people can experience it. So we welcome people from all over the country, especially priests, to visit, to make retreats, to make pilgrimages, as Ida brought so many pilgrims so recently. And that way people can see and experience the life of prayer that we share. But not all can make such a trip. And so another way that we've found to share the sung prayer that we engage in is through musical CDs. And over the years, we've been blessed to make about 11 recordings, I think at this point, 11 recordings, and they go through the liturgical year. So you can take one CD, it has all the chants from ancient times of the church for Advent, also more modern polyphony for Advent, and more modern hymns, and some original compositions too. And so with one CD for Advent, whoever listens to it can enter into the spirit of the church regarding that liturgical season, and hopefully share in the peace, the adoration that we strive to foster in our sung prayer. So we have these recordings for throughout the year. We're trying to engage people from all walks of life, all ages, to help them to grow in their personal relationship with our Lord through our sung prayer.
Hey, Sister Josefa and everything. One thing I was curious about, I don't know how familiar you are with Azusa Street, which is one of the leading Pentecostal movements that took place there in California way back in, I believe, the late 1800s and all along those lines. And as Miss Ida just put it earlier, there is a lot of strife in the world and everything. So I was just wondering, from your standpoint, do you think that we are in the midst or about to have another movement? Because one of the things, if you study the plays and even some of the other things, and I think there have been books around Azusa Street as well, it's actually led by Reverend Seymour Johnson, who's actually started somewhat the Pentecostal movement and all in that space, and was an African-American gentleman that actually had a lot of people. If you know anything about California, it's a very diverse population. So there were a lot of folks that were there of different races, of different ages, and different ethnicities, and a number of other things. And I know a lot of folks are seeing a decline in the religious involvement of the world, but maybe there will be a push or some sort of revival similar to what took place on Azusa Street all in those many days ago, and all in that space. But I just wanted your take on where we are as a world in terms of morality and in terms of this maybe a need to go back down that path and have a moral revival.
Yes, I'm not actually very familiar with that movement that you spoke about, but I do understand that at different points in history, music has had a power for the good or for the evil. And the more that good music is fostered and spread, the more that is influential in society for the good. The Greeks knew this back in ancient times. They would play different modes to counteract certain moods in each person. So if someone were depressed, they would play one mode of music. And if someone were over too angry, they would play another mode of music. So the Greeks were very insightful in recognizing the power that music has over the human person.
Yeah.
I understand at different points in I understand different points in history, music has had a crucial role in reforming society, reviving the spirit of adoration. I heard one story about a little town in Canada that had a very bad section. The police would go in there and try to clean it up, and nothing was being effective. So they brought in big loudspeakers and they pumped out classical music into this rough area of town. And the people perpetrating various crimes in that area couldn't do those same actions with beautiful music in the background. There's something incongruous. And so the beautiful surroundings, the music that was influencing them interiorly, ended up making that moral transformation that merely external corrections wasn't able to attain. So I'm hopeful that there will be a revival of morality through the revival of good music. And one of the things that our community strives for is to perpetuate the traditional chant of the church, which goes back to the Jews of the Old Testament. The chants that they would sing in the temple in Jerusalem are basically the same that our community continues to sing throughout the day in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament. And so some of these chants we've recorded in hopes to share them with other people. We've also, as I said, shared some more modern ones or classical polyphony, different high points in sacred music that we hope will resonate with other people. And we have been edified to hear from our listeners the sorts of effects that the music has had. Some families play it for their disabled children, say an autistic child. Listening to our music has been calmed and more attentive to his surroundings. Our music has helped at family deathbeds. The passing into eternity has been soothed by the sung prayer. And so I'm hopeful that in a small way, our music will introduce other people to the richness of sacred music throughout the centuries and will affect that moral revival that you were speaking of.
Yeah. And Ms. Ida, and then I'll open it up to other people as well. You kind of alluded to it earlier and everything, but how important do you think it is in terms of Giving Tuesday for people to give to social causes? We've actually gotten, some people may be surprised at this, but he's announced it on other shows, but actually Shaquille has been involved in some organizations, even some in North Carolina, that are part of trying to talk about history and history even of the African American community and other communities. And I also know that he's been involved in other projects that are definitely around a various causes, as has Jitovi, of different causes, even including working with the police and everything. But as we are thinking about Giving Tuesday, how important do you think it is to work with people that are going to give some sort of social capital? Because I do know that there was this whole notion of social investment where you aren't just investing in the company, but you're investing in the company, hoping that they will have a cause that you can agree with.
Well, I think that it's essentially very important that we get back to giving, because I mean, my early experience of this was working, but I'm going to date myself now a little bit, in the first war on poverty in Atlanta, Georgia. I was one of the social workers that were there. I was in undergraduate school at the time, but I was chosen to be one of the social workers. And firsthand, I could see how you could really grow a community by having youth programs, having senior citizens programs, teaching people how to get jobs, teaching people soft skills, hard skills, basically assisting children who couldn't read, through tutorial programs and things like that. And of course, when Ronald Reagan came in, he snatched those programs out and they were no longer. And that's when I saw the real decline, I think, in the society, because the kids had nowhere to go. It's our youth that we have to keep our eye on. If you were to look at the people who are right now presently coming out of foster care, they're really matriculating out of foster care 2 years later into the prison system. They still have a thing that if a person in the third grade is not getting their lessons, they have potential to be in prison. It's a lot of those type of things that can be ratified early on in our society by opening our purse up, not just at the end of the year, but during the year, not only just in money, but in talent, in, running for school boards, getting involved in the decision-making process. A lot of times people open their wallets up, but they have absolutely no connection to what they're doing. So what happens is they get giving fatigue. And so they just don't come back, and they go on to something else. But you have to be able to align things. I'm seeing the young people with the money are doing that now. You have to align things to causes you believe in and things you're willing to see through the end. And that is the shift I'm seeing in philanthropy, is that charity is basically kind of like an immediate need. Okay, it's like an immediate need. Okay, someone doesn't have a car, you give them a car. Someone doesn't have a scholarship, you give them a scholarship. Okay. But the bottom line is that how do you continue throughout the process? Now that shifted a lot during the pandemic, because I worked in the pandemic on finding the first tester that could actually detect and identify COVID, where it was coming from. And I was an investment director for that, and I'm still working with them now, but that's what we did. So I saw where the government could not meet those needs. They could not meet those needs, and it had to be from the philanthropy side of it. People had to give with the intent to stay with the actual results. We had over, I think, $450 million that were given from the private sector during the pandemic. And so, unfortunately, people then dried back up and went back in, and they didn't do anything because now the pandemic is over. So I think that we have to begin to re-educate people on giving. And Giving Tuesday is a good example, because number one is you get excited because you're going to participate in something. But we know when December 31st comes, you're not thinking about that. You're thinking about your goals for next year. I'm saying, think about putting these type of things in your goals next year. Think about trying to look at this as part and parcel of your wealth management plans. Think about it not just as a tax break, but how you can improve the world. And that's why I'm very interested in what the sisters have done, because in 2012, their music became top on Billboard. 2013, 2015, and they're actually the singing nuns that everybody was writing about, but we never knew who they were. Now we know who they are. So behind the scenes, they sung themselves into grace for other people and brought joy to a lot of people. And I've actually, when I was there, I even see a movement where, in fact, people who are already nuns are starting to look at what they've done and starting to reconnect to their original vows. I'm also seeing priests, like I've been looking and going to masses and watching masses, that they're now moving back into this Gregorian chant, feeling that. Now, keep in mind, they say that Gregory the Great was sung Gregorian chant by the Holy Spirit. So it's supposed to be the most healing music. And it's the music that has basically transcended centuries, but there's been hidden. So all I'm saying is that in totality, we have to begin to look at things not as just a Band-Aid approach, but looking at something that's going to have a sustainable approach. And I think what the sisters are doing is sustainable. They're on their second monastery, and they're busting at the seams. So they're feeling the need that has not been traditionally, filled. I mean, we kind of forgot about nuns and said, okay, where are they? But they're actually quietly behind the scenes. And that's why I'm saying something like this caught my attention, because I know that I wouldn't be where I am right now, educational wise. It hadn't been from Sister Bertha, Sister Anastasia, and Sister Anita. So I remember that, and I know that there's people in our lives. So what I want people to take from this today is that, young people are not going to put their money into dark holes anymore. They want to be tied to the process. And so I have a nephew. He's an athlete. He just got noticed in Orlando for 17 years of running a football camp. That he's been doing that from his high school since his time being in the NFL. And he got noticed for that. He built literacy centers because he noticed the kids couldn't read. Okay. He brought turkey drops and things when people didn't have food. That is really where philanthropy is going. So charity has kind of been basically sort of, put a hole in the dam, but that dam is bursting right now. And we've got to basically begin to put this part of the asset class, that it is something that has to come forth. Now, Warren Buffett made a very interesting article the other day. He said capitalism is not, those young people aren't feeling capitalism. They're not taking their money into capitalism. They want venture capital. They want to be truly, truly in charge. So therefore, the stock market has become so niche that it's just overwhelming to them, and they don't want to do that. And it's keeping a lot of people out of the marketplace. Okay. But the ones that really want to make changes, they're hands on right now. And that's really how we have to think about it. You think about Shaq. Shaq is hands on. You think about what Kobe Bryant did. He's hands on. Joe Montana is one of the biggest investors right now in impact investing. Okay. You've got Kushner, the guy who, made all these movies. You got Bieber, you got, Will Smith. You have a lot of these people. They have a lot of wealth, but they're not willing to put it into what they call a death trap, or for something just to dissolve itself and not have any immediate effect. And that's what they're saying. So Warren Buffett says, we've got to begin to look at the market. I mean, it's still the goose that lays the golden egg, and it still does that. But is it going to continue to do that as the wealth transfer continues? So it's about having a new way to look at philanthropy, part of the wealth management process, and see charity as what it really is, charity. I mean, you see a homeless man on the street, you give him some money. You see somebody doesn't have any clothes, those type of things. But if it's not a continuing process, it's not going to change the world. Okay, that's
yeah, absolutely. I want to thank the guests for attending. I have to leave, but I wanted to just say that we'll get into world politics tonight for a few minutes before my city council meeting. And I just want to thank everybody. And I think it's something interesting in that I wish that we would just stop. We would do more than just one day to honor Giving Tuesday, because I just feel like there's so much diverse turbulence and division and animosity and hatred going on in the world, politically, economically, in the middle of two wars. Just this whole thought of service and helping others could perhaps be the one thing that we could use in this world to bring us together. I've often heard Fareed Zakaria talk about bringing back this notion of a service corps, like the AmeriCorps, but this whole notion of service. And I'd be doing the invocation this evening at the council meeting, but John F. Kennedy, which we honored his death last week on the anniversary of his assassination, said, ask not what your country can do for you, what can you do for your country? And kind of built on this notion of service, saying that also not only what America can do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man. And I find it ironic that 60 years later, we're so far away from the vision that Kennedy laid out for us. So anyway, I just wanted to share those final sentiments before I take off. But thank you so much for being with us. And
I
Mark,
appreciate
I'll
that.
carry on.
Yeah, we'll definitely carry on. I'm sure other people have questions as well. Sister Josepha and everything. And actually, Steve kind of alluded to it. We definitely had a Catholic president that was about the service and all along those lines, that being JFK and all along those lines. And I actually had the pleasure of attending a Jesuit university. So I went to Marquette, and I think that one of the reasons that I am fairly good at critical thinking is because of some of the things that I learned while being at that university. Because as I have told Shaquille, and I've even told Jatovia and others here, I remember that if you go to certain Jesuit universities, you almost have to have theology and philosophy as your minor, because they required about 21 hours in those courses, even though that was not an official minor, because my minor was actually political science. But I definitely had people that were on opposite ends of the spectrum. I remember having a professor that was very much into liberation theology, and another one that was more on the conservative side and was a big fan of C.S. Lewis, who we have mentioned before as well, and everything. So I was just wondering your thoughts around the importance of critical thinking, even in terms of investment and all along those lines. So I'll direct that to Sister Josepha and everything. So your thoughts around the importance of critical thinking and a education that might be more fair in some of the ways that some of our Catholic universities do, and all in that space.
Yes, I appreciated what Ida said about the need for philanthropy to be sustainable and how we can address certain immediate needs, but it might not change society, because society won't be changed with just exterior adjustments. It has to be an interior change. And so I think that is fundamental that we do pursue a good education for our young people. They understand their dignity as human beings. They're called to be children of God. And this sort of interior formation will be the leaven that will transform society. So it's very important that we have good education. It's also important that individuals realize their personal relationship with God, and that interior response to His grace. It isn't enough that we receive material things that we need to sustain our bodily life, but we have to have an interior life that responds to God's grace, that brings us to our full potential as children of God. And so, as far as sustainable philanthropy, initiatives should be pursued that bring these things to the fore. It isn't just about material helps, but what will renew the interior person, what will awaken his interior life. So I hope that our community is able to achieve something like that through our music. It's certainly the goal of our life of prayer. We spend our time in the cloister, much of it in silence and in prayer, to foster our own interior relationship with God. But it's also for the whole world too. You know, we bring the intentions of everyone to our divine prayers, and we try to lift up the whole world in prayer. So I hope that there are philanthropic initiatives that will support the interior formation of societies, the educational aspects for the youth, also spiritual growth at all ages, all levels of development.
No, definitely. I'll turn it over to other folks, Kim or to Toby, or even Shaquille, if you have any questions for our guests. I see Kim's got her hand up, so Kim, go for it.
I want to thank Sister for her sacrifice and services that she does for humanity. You know, it's not enough people who go out there and do the things that you do for us for nothing. I mean, you give everything from your heart, and I want to thank you for that. Also, you know, the giving doesn't have to occur just today. It can happen any day. One of the things I love about visiting my family, my sister's a big giver, and she doesn't make anything right now. Like literally, she lost her job in the middle of this year, 4th of July. But here she is at Thanksgiving, and she says, I want to take all the leftovers. You know, she's telling her husband, honey, you know, get the car ready. I'm going to pack up sandwiches and lunch boxes and go get some drinks. And we're going to go to the local place, because there's a place where there's a lot of homeless, and she will go hand out lunch boxes to everyone. She'll make sure, you know, he's got to go count how many there are. But it doesn't, the thing is, it's not, I'm not bragging about my sister just to be bragging about that. People do this every day and no one really sees it. But if we all did a little bit of something, it makes a big difference. It doesn't have to be as big as what Taylor Swift does or the big celebrities with big money. And our return on investment is seeing a smile or hearing a thank you or just hearing their story. That's the other thing that they like to do. They like to sit down sometimes and just talk to these people and hear their stories, and not their sad part about how they got there. Some of them have great memories of of their past lives. So, I mean, humanity doesn't have to stop at a charitable door at Goodwill, or it can come straight from your home, just leftovers, and they become this great meal for these people. So don't stop there. But sister, and I hate that I couldn't hear anything in the beginning. My system had a reboot and it lost its speakers. But is there something that we can do to help and assist with what you're doing? Do you have a link, a website or something that we can join in with some of the things that you're doing?
Yes, thank you so much, Kim, for your kind remarks about our religious work. Our community has a website, www.benedictinesofmary.org. It has a page all about Sister Wilhelmina and another about our history. But there are also ways that you can support us, especially with our building project. We're trying to build a new monastery so that we can continue to receive the many women who are applying to enter our community. So we would be grateful for anyone who wishes to support our spiritual apostolate of prayer through enabling us to build this monastery for our new candidates.
Thank you.
Wow. Appreciate that and everything. Shaquille and Jacoby might have questions as well, but just one really quick one, and this may be putting a little bit of a different spin on it, maybe even a not as positive a spin, but I'd love to hear, maybe this is an Ida question. My mom actually used to work for years in the foundation world. She actually ran the Golden Leaf Foundation for a number of years here in North Carolina and everything. And I do know that sometimes, unfortunately, foundations can get in this cycle of not realizing that the money is there for a limited amount of time and everything. So they sometimes will go from foundation to foundation and not really have a plan of sustainability. So I just wanted your thoughts around that, because I do know from talking to my mom on a regular basis and actually spent Thanksgiving with her for about 3 days that is a concern when she was running that organization, that sometimes people didn't have a plan in terms of sustainability and all along those lines. So you can definitely love to give to those organizations. Mom loved to give to a variety of organizations when she was running that foundation, but she also tried to encourage them not to run from foundation to foundation to foundation, but to try to create a plan of sustainability so that they could actually be sustainable even without the foundation money. But I'd love to hear your thoughts around that as one that's worked in that field.
Well, when you look at foundations, usually that has a lot to do with usually educational institutions, research. They're usually big projects, because that's how I got started with Carnegie, Rockefeller and all of those. But what's happened is I think with foundations is that they become monolithic in a lot of ways. Because of the structure that they are, that they only can give it a certain period of time. They have to, they have certain people that they have to, it's a regular, they give to, they have that list. But a lot of those dollars don't make it out to the regular society a lot of times. Okay, they're incremental dollars that kind of drip down. And I think what's happening with foundations right now is, and I see it with Rockefeller, because Rockefeller's already put together an impact investment panel, that they're actually looking at impact investments. And they're actually talking about trying to get this money down the channel a little bit quicker. Okay, because during the pandemic, they had to open it up. We saw that when they had to open it up, because there were no government money available. So it changed their whole parameters about how they're structured now. So a lot of them are going out of the blue proverbial box and saying, we're going to do some impacting over here, investing. We're going to tie it to ESGs, but we're going to also train our grantees to be better grantees, or we're going to select better grantees. You're starting to see the change now, because the money isn't really coming in like it used to be. I mean, if you go back to in 1980, you probably had 80% of the money was going to foundations from large donors. But now that's changed dramatically. Now you're now seeing it's a certain group of people who are contributing to foundation, but the general private public, like they used to, they're not doing that. And even corporations are getting away from that and making their own basically foundations, because they want to be able to direct that money to their causes, their incremental things. So I think that foundations, this is the way that the young people describe it, is as a dark hole. They don't want to put their money in that. That's what Bieber said. He said, I don't want to put my money in there. I want to know where my money is going. And so I think that foundations, really, because of the money they had, they could have made a lot of social changes. They really got the tax breaks. They could have made the social changes. But I think the way they were structured, they were heavy laden, with regulations and things, that they couldn't do that. But now it's changed dramatically. I think you're going to see foundations begin to shift a little bit, because if they're not part of the wealth management package, then they're going to be left out. So, and we're starting to see that change, because even politically, people are pulling their monies from these large universities, which hold these big foundations, and they're pulling the money away. So I just think philanthropy itself needs to be brought to the next level, and not just be laden down as part of just foundations, that it needs to be seen as something that is an asset class, that, you can do that through exchange traded funds. You can do it from a lot of different ways that you can really get involved in this, but indirectly. But the problem we have is that we have traditional market ideology, ideology, and then we've got traditional charity ideology, and for some reason those things need to come together, because that is really what's going to improve the economy and improve the gap that we have between so many people, the wage gap and all of that, because none of that is being worked on. I mean, universities will if you go to, most of the people I know tell me they can't find people coming out of university who can solve problems. So they're not getting the great graduates they thought they would get, because they don't have the innovation coming in. But if you were to merge that together, you would spur innovation, you would spur better education, all of that would come together. I think it's time for that to change, and I think it's going to change. Warren Buffett is saying it's got to change too. He just wrote the article 2 days ago, so he's already thinking like me. I don't know if Warren Buffett would give me credit for that, but he's thinking like me already, that philanthropy has to be sustainable. And if you're doing that, go ahead, hon. Sorry, she's raising her hand.
Oh no, I agree with you. I think it's something that we need to start focusing on, and maybe even build educational courses on how to establish such organizations. I don't think there are enough out there. If you go to the NFL Super Bowl, the big Super Bowl campaign before the Super Bowl, like there's a week, actually a full month, and all of it is that. It's the Super Bowl players, it's the NFL players, they all get together. They have all kinds of charitable programs that they do, and it's beautiful. It's all just about giving back to their communities, to society. There's just so much of it,
They do about $200 million during the Super Bowl. My nephew played for 10 years.
I was there.
In fact, I had a sports show when he was playing, and I actually interviewed all the charities. They built a home during that time with they come together and they build the homes. It would have been like 20 homes last year or something like that. It's an incredible, and people don't know about that.
No, they don't.
They don't know about it, but I was fortunate enough, since my nephew played for the NFL, and I had a sports show, they allowed me, that was one of the things, I had to do that to make sure I kept him straight. So I had to have the sports show when he's at University of Florida, and then I continued it. And actually, I'm going to make a little joke here. All of my tapes are available on Audible now. I just found that out. It's on Amazon for sale on Audible. I can't believe it.
Now you're on Audible. You're on Audible.
A little point in here, Mark. Okay, if you go to their website, www.benedictinesofmary.org, which I just did, I learned this, by the way, from Shaquille, this little trick. Okay. You can go to their shop, which I did, and you can buy all their CDs, all of them, which I did. So I'm going to get all your CDs. I've already learned. I learned this from this guy.
Yeah, you learned it from Shaquille and everything. Just really quickly, Miss Ida, just out of curiosity, I know that our listeners are probably, our listeners are probably,
it's available in the United States. I know I bought all your CDs.
Yeah, and Shaquille will check and see if it's available in Australia. But just really quickly, Miss Ida, if I can ask and everything, because you got me curious now, who was your nephew that played in the NFL? Because I do
He
follow
was the person that stood next to Roethlisberger. He was his left tackle.
Okay.
Oh, really? Left tackle.
He's 6'8" and 320 pounds when he played.
Hey. Woo!
His name was Max Starks. He's now commentary on all of the Pittsburgh Steelers games.
Nice.
Yeah, and he's in the Hall of Fame at University of Florida.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he's had a, I started him when he first went to Pittsburgh Steelers. He's the youngest NFL player to start a foundation, and he started it right there.
So he actually has a private foundation then.
Yeah, he does, and he supports basically literacy, which that's just really, he loves literacy, and he supports these football camps. 17 years.
Wow,
So
that's
we
amazing.
come from a family of givers. So.
That sounds
Well,
like
a lot of the football players do. They start their own, a lot, not all of them, but a lot, because it's easier for them to manage their charitable investments. Just like you said, it's an investment. It's not really about
what you're going to do at 21 with $1 million.
Right.
Exactly. Good
At
point.
21.
I mean,
Yeah, you got to learn those skill sets.
It's it's a rainy day. Yeah, it's nothing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Ida and Sister Josepha.
If you ever go to Barcelona, Spain, there's an interesting monastery called Montserrat, right outside of Barcelona, Spain, which they do Gregorian chants. It's quite mystical. It's almost like you never hear about Montserrat unless you go to Barcelona. Then an hour up in the mountains, in this really mystical place, is this Montserrat Abbey, which they actually named the island of Montserrat after in the Western Hemisphere, because they took one of the monks there and they just named it Montserrat for what it's worth. But you can spend the night there, but you have to book months in advance. They're like sold out. I mean,
yeah, they're sold out and everything. But Nick, just really quickly before we get ready to wind down, because I know we've got Sasha's show going to start in a few minutes. I didn't know if either Shaquille or Chitobi, because I did allude to both of them during the course of this conversation, if they had any thoughts or any questions or anything along those lines before we get out of here.
So he's the resident of Australia or UK over there.
Either way,
I couldn't figure out what CD to buy, but then you said you can buy them all right here, so I just bought all of them.
Chitobi or Shaquille, any thoughts?
Well, I'll on the website, I think, to be safe rather than sorry, I'm going to send a money order or a check in with enough postage for it to actually be sent to Australia. But I think that will come in as quite a beautiful gift for Christmas for some of my Catholic friends. So I'm looking forward to buying some of those. There's a whole pack there. Buy all of our CDs. I might buy 3 or 4 of them, I think.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool.
And share with them what your goal is for completing that monastery, by the way.
Yeah, the monastery.
Oh, the goal is very exciting. We may finish the monastery this July. We still have we're about halfway there as far as the funds that we've raised. So we still have a ways to go with the fundraising, but we're very relieved to hear that the monastery may be finished in July because we have already women waiting to come in. So we need to have a place ready to receive them.
Right.
Yeah. So what is the monetary numbers that you're looking at? Do you have a number yet?
Yes, the total project should be 18 million, and we've raised about 8 million.
Right.
Yeah, that's really
Sounds
impressive.
like a great startup, doesn't it? Amazing.
Totally, and everything. Chitobi, any quick thoughts
And I
before
wanted
we
to
get ready
tell
to
you
get on out of
something.
here and everything?
Yeah. You were
Chitobi?
talking about Spain, right?
I'm sorry, the sound broke up. Could you mind repeating the question?
No, just asking my other gentleman because he's the only one that hasn't had a chance to chime in. If Jacoby had any thoughts before we get ready to get out of here. So Jacoby's the gentleman toward the bottom right now.
I mean, my only thought is thank you to the both of you for what you do, because in all honesty, you're not going to get the adulation and the thanks and the appreciation because when you're doing it, it's just the way our society works. When you're doing good work, only a few will recognize and say thank you. But more in the world will be affected by and truly be appreciative of, but they won't be able to say it. So just like Kim pointed out earlier, I mean, the music and everything else, I mean, what you do is very appreciated. And I truly hope you guys know that.
Thank you. We appreciate your expressing the thanks on everyone else's behalf.
Exactly.
Please be assured of our prayers.
Thank you. And she's going to keep all you guys in prayer too. Remember that. That's what I like. She prays for me. I love that.
Well, if I can just lead on a light note, since everything has been a very deep conversation in terms of the Giving Tuesday and all along those lines. Sometimes we get into some deep debates and all in that space. So sometimes we might need some prayer for peace, and definitely that is something that goes on with both myself, Shaquille, and Jacoby. So we might need some prayers for peace from you and all along those lines, just so we can keep things simple and all along those lines, because we can have some heated debates. Not as much. You said you've watched this show, Miss Ida, so you know we can have some heated debates sometimes, but we will definitely pray for you to give us prayer to keep the peace.
So, sister, why don't you go ahead and start with the prayer, sister?
Yes.
I would be happy to. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Ghost. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Please be assured of our prayers for you all.
Pod TV Network, you're in prayer. Thank you again for allowing us to have this show today. We're very excited. Sister waving at you because I didn't get to wave with you when I was in Gower. So.
I appreciate it.
I'm happy to meet you last.
Yes, and I'll be, well, we're going to go back because we're running regular pilgrimages there. So I'm encouraging people to come back. One of the things I just want to leave you with a note is that most of the time incorruptibles typically are up for sainthood. And there's a real good case that next year will be 5 years that she's been deceased. So she really could be up for sainthood, Sister Wilhelmina. And so we want to make sure that people, that could be a major change for sisters and them, because right now it's very quiet in Garo. You go down a road that doesn't really exist. Everything's very quiet. It's probably going to get pretty robust for them. So I'm hoping that if that does happen, if they come back again and ask you for some money, you can help them. Okay. All right. We'll be back next Giving Tuesday. Okay. Thank you.
Sounds good. We're going to get on out of here. And at some point, both Miss Ida and Sister Josefa will have to get some of that music playing as well. I know that Nick bought some and all along those lines, but we'll have to have some of the music playing the next time that y'all make a return trip, or maybe we'll get some of the music that Nick is getting and find a way to play it on the air at a later time. But right now we're getting ready to get out of here because I know that they're doing the show around Ukraine, Russia, and China on the other side and all along those lines. But I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation and look forward to seeing you in the not too distant future. And I'll have to make a pilgrimage possibly to that particular area and see some of the great things that y'all are building there as well. But look forward to having a continued conversation later on. But I have definitely appreciated having you both on this particular day.
Thank you so much. God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye. God bless you.